Well, hello, everybody. Can you hear me? All right. Well, between the two of them, they've survived corsets, death. They've been jilted at the altar. They've also survived innumerable cooking accidents. So I'd like to welcome Laura Carmichael and Lesley Nicol. I'd also like to introduce Laura's legs, which have never been seen by any of you, above the ankle.
I can't believe that we're sat like this on this stage. I'm very embarrassed.
No, don't be. They look
I've got my
fantastic.
jacket over.
As many of you know, Laura gets to wear nice clothes, so we're very happy that she can talk about the fashion. But for the two of you, obviously, this has been an enormous phenomenon. This is the fourth year now of work on this show together.
Yeah.
So since this is an audience of actors, I'd like you both to talk just a little bit about how you found your way into this profession. So why don't you start us off, Laura?
Well, goodness, I danced a bit when I was a kid, and I wanted to do that. The major turning point was when I was about 10, and my elder sister had been doing this sort of professional pantomime every Christmas, and it was sort of my go. And this year, I don't know if I've told you this, but Lionel Blair, who's sort of a light entertainment star back home, came to do a sort of a reality show, and he auditioned the girls, which is the first time it ever happened. And he auditioned us, and he picked my younger sister and my best friend, but not me. And you know, it was this sort of skipping around in a circle thing. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it had this real effect on me that I went, it was my fault, Mum. I didn't smile hard enough. I wasn't skipping high enough. And it sort of made me really, sort of at a weird young age, sort of get really professional about it and determined from like age 10. So I then carried that on, and then when I was about 16, I did my first Shakespeare, and that's when I thought, not musical theatre, but theatre. And then I went to Bristol Vic Drama School. And
the rest is history.
Yeah. That's kind
and
of it.
you were a receptionist when you got the call.
I was, yeah. I mean, I had that really typical experience of graduating and having a scary couple of years. And I left without an agent and was living in London, working in a bar and working in a doctor's surgery and being a nanny. And so, yeah, I was in the doctor's surgery when I got the call to say I got the job. So
exciting
there were lots
day.
of patients waiting outside, not knowing what was going on.
So, inspiration. And you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I don't think this is that unusual a route, because the reason I became an actor was because I was pathologically shy. I mean, literally crippled. And I think a lot of actors do it because they suddenly discover that they've got a freedom, haven't you? I mean, that suddenly you can be somebody else and you're not terrified. So I think when I was 10, I did a funny poem at school, and my dad said he had rigor mortis. He was so scared to think, what was I doing in front of all these people and what was going to happen? But actually, it was a funny poem, and I got a few laughs, cheap thing that I am. And we know what that's like. And I went, whoa, and a light bulb went on. It's like, I want more of that. That is amazing. So then a little tiny diversion was I wanted to be a nurse or a flight attendant. But in those days, a flight attendant had to be like 5'10", and I was and am still 5'1". And a nurse, you know, I wanted the uniforms. That's what I wanted.
The good uniforms.
I did. I wanted to dress
up. And you found
up.
your way into a uniform of sorts.
I did, yes. Some 40 years later. Yeah, so that's what happened. And my mum used to do live TV when I was very, very young. I used to see her go out the door on a Sunday, and then I'd see her later on in the little TV in the corner, and that was a bit like amazing. So, and she looked very glamorous to me, so that's what pushed me, I think.
When you got this script, did you know? I mean, did you both have a sense of what you, obviously Julian Fellowes is a well-known and very successful writer, but you never know, obviously, on a project. But was there any inkling that you had tapped into something bigger?
Well, I'm sure that we all kind of heard on the grapevine who was in it. Did you hear that Maggie was in it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maggie and Hugh Bonneville. Well, that's not a bad
They
start.
were
So
attached.
they were attached when you...
Yeah.
They were attached, yes, they were when I came in, and a few other very, very good British actors that you kind of go, whoa, that's good. And we all got the script to read, and of course, you know a good script when you see one, and it was a real page-turner, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
And
I mean, I did have this different experience because I really was a sort of struggling actress. So I was, I just actually I landed a job doing Twelfth Night, and I was going to go away to Dubai for a month to go and do this.
A hotbed of Shakespearean theatre.
Exactly. Bizarre. And so, you know, I was about to do that, and I was so excited about this job, and I was going to play Viola, and it was with this wonderful director that I knew. And then I had a call from my agent to say, you have an audition for a TV period drama, and it genuinely was my first TV audition. And I thought, I'm going to have to turn down this great part to play a maid who comes in and says, yes, my lord, and goes. And I thought that that's bound to be what it is, you know, a one-line part. And then I got to the audition, and they gave me 5 scenes, and I went, oh, well, this looks quite good. And so then after that first meeting, I then got 5 of the scripts, and I read them all in an hour and a half. Do you know what I mean? It was just, they were so exciting to read. And yeah, but I mean, I would have been excited had nobody watched it, and just, you know, I was so excited to be part of it. But the fact that it has proved itself, you know, to be a quality show and one that people have taken to their hearts is, you know, I'm very aware of how lucky I am.
And of course, there's the extraordinary international success of this show. I mean, in England, in the UK, there's any number of period dramas. There's probably one on every week of the year. There's many, many, many. But this has touched a chord around the world in a way, you know, that's really unprecedented. Mm-hmm. What's that like in terms of your careers as actors when you travel? You travel all over the English-speaking world and beyond to promote the show. And I assume everywhere you go, there's a kind of different reaction or an enormous fan reaction. Is that different than what it's like in the UK in terms of, I mean, you would know, Lesley, you've been a very successful actress for many, many, many years in the UK.
I'll tell you what, I mean, in terms of being here, I came over in August, and we're going back in a minute because we're starting season 5, and we came last year. We came last year, my husband and I came for 3 months, and I was being pushed by my British agent who was saying, you know, there is a huge kind of excitement about this show, and if ever there was a time when the doors might be open, it's now. And it is true. And I had a series of meetings last year and this year. Never in your million years would they be like that in the United Kingdom. I mean, much as I love my country, our casting directors just don't do that. I mean, I went to a film studio last year, one of the big studios, and I met a young casting director. It's one of my first meetings, and it was a real shock. And he looked at me, you know, when people kind of are a bit kind of excited, sort of, you know. He looked a bit weird, and I went, hello. And he said, hi. I just need to tell you, I was going up to meet 3 others. It was, you know, a lot of them. And I need to tell you, we really, really love your show. And just so you know, we are so excited we might start talking in tongues. Now, I'm sorry, I don't see a British one doing that, do you?
No, I haven't.
So the level of enthusiasm here, honestly, and, you know, you guys just express it easier than we do. So that's what we've been getting a lot of, and it's what's not to like about that. It's amazing. So it's opened doors that certainly were never open for me 5 years ago.
And you've been doing work here as well, at least you did a television show.
Last year I did Once Upon a Time, and this year I've done a bit of voice work, and I went up for Raising Hope today. Which,
excellent.
yeah, thank you. I've been here for 5 months. I'm leaving next week, and it shoots next week.
And
Ain't that the way it is?
is the environment different on an American set?
Do you know, well, here's the thing. I mean, Downton, we call it the Downton effect, because this show just is not like anything else any of us have ever done. I mean, any of us. And so going onto a set in Vancouver on a show that was in its second season, I think, or the end of the first, but anyway, bunch of people who know each other very well. You know how that is. If you go in for a day, or actually it wasn't a day, it was a couple of weeks, but even so, you're walking into a family that's already existing, and it can be hard. It can be quite difficult. But the first thing that happened, Downton effect, was the second came to meet me and went, "Oh, Mrs. Barrymore!" And that's how it was. And that was the crew, that was the cast. I was treated like, you know, Beyonce. Not really Beyonce, but you know what I mean. Dream on, Lesley. But so it wasn't difficult. And then once you get to work, it's the same the world over. You're doing what you do, and it's fine. Yeah.
And Laura, are you interested in working in the US?
Absolutely, yeah. It's brilliant over here, and we're all so excited that it's gone down as well as it has here. It's, you know, we were at the Golden Globes at the weekend, and it's just completely natty. And yeah, I love the stuff that's made here, and always have done. And I think there isn't an actor working that doesn't think about Hollywood and the work that is made in this country, because it's so brilliant, and sort of informs so much of why you love movies and why you love great TV and great theatre. You know, it's there's a lot here, I think, and all actors are kind of greedy in that way, and you kind of do want to do everything, and you want to try your hand at film and theatre and TV and anything else there is to offer, really.
Tell us a little bit about the work that you've done in terms of character. I mean, very different characters sharing utterly miserable lives most of the time. No. Vision problems and man problems.
Oh, that's true, yes.
But, you know, a lot of what is said about the show is that so much is on the page for the actor, that he writes very densely. There's a lot that's there that's revealed in language, which is possibly, you know, more in terms of, you know, writing English than American, at least the way people talk about scripts. But when you got these parts, I mean, one presumes you had to kind of dig in a little bit into who these women were and where they lived in time. And I'm wondering, for both of you, if you did any kind of preparation off book to sort of get yourselves ready in terms of, and ongoing as you go through the 20th century. Clearly, in your case, it's been a very exciting 20th century for women, and it's reflected in your character. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Julian does give you so much in such a short space, you know, of time. Your scenes are 5 or 6 lines long, and in those moments he is able to establish so much about a character. It's his absolute talent and skill, and what makes him such a brilliant writer. So he does give you a lot, and he highlights these moments of history and social change that he wants to focus on and to sort of to touch on. So in those times you can, you go away and you do a bit of research. And in the second series, during the war storylines, you know, I went to the Imperial War Museum and I looked at the early kind of land army stuff and looked at these women that did work on the farms, which is really helpful. I also found some amazing film, some pathé film of women working the land in during the First World War, which I found just super exciting and moving. And they were all wearing headscarves, which is when I started to say, can I wear headscarves? And that's become a bit of an Edith thing now. But that's a really superficial thing. I mean, there's lots of other things that, you know, your research can add.
You do imagine Edith sort of driving a Jeep in World War II or something.
Yeah,
she has that.
There.
She's a can-do kind of gal.
Yeah. Well, and she's really grown, I think. And that's the thing about this drama that spans such a lot of time, that moves so quickly, is that you do get to do these sort of significant changes, particularly for the girls who are at that stage when they're growing up. it's a sort of really exciting time to play.
It's two things, really. The first thing that happened for the below stairs people on day one of rehearsals of season 1 was we have a historical advisor called Alistair Bruce. And Alistair is, he's really posh, isn't he? He's ever so posh. He's he's a very, clever historian. He's a serviceman. He used to hang out with Prince Margaret. He's an equerry to Prince Edward. But he knows the history, and it's not just the bare facts. The dry historical stuff. He knows how these places worked. And so the first thing he did was he lined us all up in order of importance. So there was Mr. Carson on one end, big, huge Jim, a little baby Daisy at the end. And for me, the helpful thing he said to me was he just put it in context, because none of us are historians, obviously. You can read books, but he makes it personal. He makes it so that you understand why people are behaving the way they are. So for me, he said, you may be third in line in status below stairs, but the kitchen is yours, and nobody is more senior than you are. And he said the stakes are really high. So if it looks like she's an old battle axe and she's a miserable git who shouts at people, the fact of the matter is that there is no room for error. If you go to Downton Abbey and you have dinner, it better be good. And there's no room for mistakes. And so that's why she's always beating people up and keeping them up to speed. There's a real proper reason for it. What did happen, and Julian said this the other day, he said, obviously, he wrote, and he did write, 18 fully, properly fleshed out characters to begin with, out of his head. I always think that's just, people don't give him credit for that. This is not an adaptation of a book. This is proper out of his head. But he wrote all these characters, and he said to me the other day, he said, originally Mrs. Patmore wasn't funny. I didn't write her funny, but probably because I have a relationship with Sophie, who plays Daisy, because we get on really well and always have something was happening, and so he's picked up from all of us. As we've gone along, it's given him a way to go. And interestingly, on top of that, there was, the chauffeur, Branson, Alan Leach, who obviously is Irish, which he came in and read for the part in Yorkshire because he'd been told by his agent that's what they wanted. And Julian said, could you just do your Irish? And Julian said, no, I've prepared a very good Yorkshire. Go on, just do it in Irish. And he did it, of course. And, often when it's your own accent, it brings more stuff. And, of course, that gave him a whole way to go that he hadn't even thought of, because he was now Irish. So it has become a kind of two-way street, but it started out pretty bloody good before we got our hands on it.
Is there any improvisation in terms of your scenes with Daisy? It's all on the page.
No, that's not encouraged.
We don't do that.
Well, no, but you know what? When things are well written, you often, when you make a mistake, you've made the mistake because it doesn't sound quite as good.
Right.
And actually, we haven't got time for lots of hilarious improv.
Well, I think, these scenes are very dense. I mean, there are a lot of characters and scenes. The scenes are very short, which kind of evokes some of the best American hour-long dramas. There's a real through line there when you look at an ER and Downton
Julian
Abbey.
says he thinks one of the reasons it's successful, doesn't he, that he's picked up from watching great American TV, things like ER and The West Wing.
Yeah, and that sort of short scenes, but with a lot going on, which is a kind of real pain to film. I mean, in terms of, people can't believe it, it takes us 6 months to do it, and they're like, gosh, that's like a movie, you've got so much time, and it's like, if you do more than 2 takes, you really do feel, like
the one is when you're doing the scene we wrap at 7, and when they start doing the last scene at 6:30, you know that one? You go, oh, Jesus Christ, and there is no room to go wrong here. But it's fast, and we have to get on with it. Yeah.
Right. I should say, for people who may not know this, I imagine everybody here is a huge fan, but you two actually don't work together very much.
Never.
Because
never been in
the
the same
kitchen, the
scene.
downstairs scenes are filmed at Ealing, and yours are at Highclere. And there are very few times even to engineer a reason why you would come upstairs or you would go below.
That's right. I mean, that's another thing Alistair said very early on. There was season 1. I think a duke comes to the castle,
Yes.
and all the servants were lined up outside to meet him, and I'm going, can I? And he goes, no. Absolutely not. It makes no sense. You've got a dinner for 25 people. Of course you're not going to be standing in the driveway. So there's logical reasons for it. But I miss out on going to play with my friends. So.
You know, it's interesting, particularly with your character, which could be a stock, kind of comic character. Over these several years, there's a real vulnerability to your character. And I think, talk a little bit about, you know, you say the stakes are high. If you had lost your vision, or if Daisy supplants you in the kitchen, there are real consequences.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
In a world where there is no Social Security, there's no National Health Service, there's nothing to really catch you. So how does that inform performance, and talk a little bit about that?
Well, what was great was that, as I say, it started out, Mrs. Palmer was a shouty old ratbag, and then the eye situation happened, and of course throwing salt all over a dessert, you know, at a proper posh dinner party doesn't get much worse than that. So she was in a terrible state. But I loved it that he allowed her to be vulnerable, that he was investigating that, because, you know, we're all lots of things, and why shouldn't she be vulnerable? And of course, that was about as scary as it would get. They put her on a train, took her to London, dumped her in a room in a hospital with nobody around except Anna, who has to leave her. And that was great as an actor to just investigate that. This woman's out of her comfort zone, couldn't be worse. And as you say, if she hadn't had a benevolent employer, what's going to happen? That's her home, that's her life, that's her career, it's everything. And doesn't seem she's got a massive family. She may have she has a sister somewhere. No, it's devastating. So, yeah, we have to be reminded of that when we're doing it.
And for you, obviously, the stakes are on the other side of the coin, equally high. You come into the show a bit nasty. I mean, you did something really bad, let's face it.
Yeah, but
It was
Explain.
not nice. It was not nice to do
no,
that.
but I mean, I always felt for Edith from the beginning, like that. You know, that was. I found that a really helpful way in the heartbreak of losing Patrick, who she loved. You know, and Mary was
didn't
so
care.
callous about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you know, that pain is there, and I think that's the great thing with Julian, is he never writes just bad or just good. He gives you a human reason why people behave that way, and you know, it's about being self-interested, and Edith is absolutely that.
And a survivor, and an
Yeah.
amazing, durable character. I mean, she's grown
Yeah.
as a character through the show, and has really, I mean, if you think about the stakes for upper class women, you know, she's basically been written off as not marriageable, really.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
she keeps getting up and finding her way.
Yeah, and I do think it's those knocks that have led her to be as interesting a character as she is, and as strong a character as she is. I think she would have happily married, you know, a lord down the road and been very conventional, but it wasn't for her, and it sort of forced her to find another path for herself, and that's when she writes the letter and gets offered the job at the newspaper, which sort of opens this whole other side to her life, and I love that. I feel like it's a great sort of story of, you know, how to survive life and you know, the bad things that happen, and she really, you know, she's ambitious, she wants something for herself, and you know, it's wonderful to play.
Obviously, one of the most fascinating relationships is the relationship between her and her sister,
Yes.
which is so awful on one level. And
Yeah.
yet there are these little truces that they make throughout the show where they find a way to make common cause, and some really lovely moments between the two of you towards the end of the last series where,
Yeah.
you know, there's some really wrenching things that happen. What is it like working with Michelle? Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, it's great. We're such good friends, and I think really early on we sort of discovered that we're quite similar in the way that we work, and we would spend a lot of time in the hotel the night before running lines and getting excited about things and how we wanted it to work, and we still do that. We talk an awful lot. So I think that really helps those scenes, and I think we established a way of really enjoying those scenes together. And yeah, the rivalry is so fun, and
It's great.
and because I think, you know, we genuinely do love each other, I guess we don't hold back, which is fun. There's no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Like, we know, we can
That
say
letter
it.
that I sent to the embassy.
I know, yeah.
And then you, of course, you have a counterpoint in Daisy, a same sort of adversarial but affectionate relationship that's grown. And how is that working?
Well, it's funny, this trip here, this time, several people have said to me, did you guys read together? Because you do seem to have a relationship that works very well. So did they try lots of combinations? And I said, no, we met on the only day of rehearsal that there was, in fact. And I was told there was a girl called Sophie McShearer somewhere, and I looked across the hall and I saw this little thing in a trailer trash coat. Really, a tarty leopard skin coat. And I had exactly the same coat. And I thought, that's my girl. And that, from the first minute, we got on really well. And so, you know, I would be bereft if she wasn't around. So, yeah, it's very important to me to work with her. She's amazing. She never, ever is anything other than truthful. She doesn't know how to do it. She just comes in and nails it. That's what she does. And she's deeply humble and thinks she's rubbish.
That's nice. So now, costumes. One of the things that... You know, it's funny, when I first met you, and you know, and both of you, I mean, and you get this all the time, I mean, you really, they don't necessarily do you favors all the time on that show. But, you know, certainly with your character has sort of evolved. So much of the character I think you could root in wardrobe, a lot of what's happened. So you find it difficult to work in, you know, I mean, you've actually lost a corset now, so your dresses are probably easier. Talk a little bit about that.
I mean, it's brilliant, and we have because we have this great designer, and she's taught me so much about costume and sort of the importance of that as an actor, and how to deal with the psychological decisions of getting dressed every morning. Like, you know, she really does come in and she's like, you know, she's feeling a bit down, so I don't think she's going to go with that. And I think, you know, she really does think about it. And she picks things at times when she wants Edith to look vulnerable, that make her look like a little girl. And, you know, she really does tell such wonderful stories with her work. And for Edith, as she journeys to London and becomes a writer, becomes a professional, she does get more sophisticated. And also in London, this is where the new trends are coming in. So she does get the more exciting dresses.
She certainly, in this series, certainly early on, because there's so much about mourning, which has changed totally in our culture, that there's so many cues, certainly for Michelle, the changes in the colors from dark black to purple to this is all very conscious. And of course for you, you know, there are all those amazing options.
Okay, here's the positive side. You have to get changed loads and loads and loads, don't you, in the day? You do.
Because you had one dress, the Beadith, or whatever.
The Beadith. I love that that's become sort of well known. My funny costume girls christened one dress Beadith, because it was very beady, and you know, with singing as we got it out of the package. But yeah, that was a phenomenal dress, and we knew that was going to be a moment in the episode, you know, where she had to look great and like she's made this big effort, and so yeah, that's sort of the showstopper.
I got a pink shirt last year.
Very good. Very good. Deserves a round of applause.
For my boyfriend, who didn't stay around for more than 5 minutes, but yeah.
That's, you know, obviously the other thing is that you've both been so terribly unlucky.
Yeah, we are.
Do you go to Julian and say, you know, stop it?
Yes, I've asked for another boyfriend. He didn't look very happy about it, so I said, can I have a dog? I mean, if I could have a dog, I'd be happy.
Oh,
I don't think he's going to let me have a dog either.
Well, actually, you know that they're a nightmare, aren't lovely
Yeah.
Abby, our dog upstairs.
That's true. You've got a lot of dog problems, haven't you?
It does.
Hugh
Anton
Bonneville
Abby.
goes around with huge pockets full of sausages, doesn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah.
And shouting, Abby, Abby, under his breath.
Yeah.
But,
Do you ever think about what it would be like if your parts were switched, or if you were an upstairs character? Not character for character, but it's an interesting dichotomy, because there are things you can't do as an actor because you're restrained by your social position, and there are ways that you can sort of be larger as an actor because of what you get to do in the kitchen. There's a range of expression. There's a kind of emotional quality to your work that's just different. You're much more restrained, and I would think that you must wonder about that. I'm getting the signal.
Shut up sign.
Yeah. Cut it out. They'll play me out.
yeah, I mean, I guess it is. But then the sort of hierarchy thing, the etiquette is just as strong downstairs.
Absolutely it is, yeah. I think the obvious thing is we work twice as fast. We go at a lick. We go at a speed because it makes logical sense that we would have been. You guys are quite, you're hanging
Measured.
around a bit kind of quiet, aren't you?
Yeah.
They don't extend a lot of energy, let's put it that way.
No.
Whereas we
don't
never
break a
stop.
sweat.
Yeah.
No.
But no, you're right. The hierarchy. There's as much snobbishness downstairs as there is up. That's
If
for
not
sure.
more.
If
in
not
some
more,
cases, yeah.
Yes, Carson.
Certainly. Well, he is very, very tough. Okay, so there's some audience questions here that I'd like to share with you. This is from Bree. What advice... Bree is out there. Wave,
She
Bree,
is.
please. What advice do you have for theater-trained actors that hope to transition to film and television work?
I can do that. I started in theatre in the 70s, and I spent quite a long time trying to get into TV. I was really frightened of it, because in the days that I trained, you didn't get any TV training. So I had no idea really what you were supposed to do, except apparently less, but I knew nothing at all. And I used to sit regularly in the reception building, having still a little bit of shyness, with the biggest, reddest chest, absolutely dreadful kind of anxiety rash. And then I'd sit there kind of sweating. I mean, it took me a heck of a long time. So, it comes when it should come, and it took me a while, but don't ever think that because it's not like that, it won't happen. I mean, she's just given the best example of how amazing things can happen. I mean, for God's sake, this is her first job. First telly job. So all I would say is it took me quite a few years to get any kind of television, but it came in the end.
Yeah, and I think that's it, just to not think that you are in any way different, because, good acting is good acting, and that we're told to do less, but it really depends on the context, and, some of our moments in Downton are enormous, and then others are tiny and subtle, and yes, they are different to what you do on stage, but I think the thing is to not doubt yourself, and I certainly had moments when I was nervous that, if an opportunity arose to do TV, would I be any good at it? And, I hadn't done any in 3 years, which obviously is nothing now when I look back on it in the context of my career. But at the time, it felt scary. And I think the thing is to just to keep going and to keep improving your craft. And that's the key of it, really.
And we should say you both continue to enjoy doing theater work.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Crystal Ann Taylor has a question. That's
Hi.
great. This is for you, Lesley. Mrs. Patmore seems so perfect. How I imagine the cook during that era to be. Seems perfect. You said, okay. I think you're perfect as well. How did you, or do you, research a role? So we sort of covered that, but her point is that kind of role doesn't exist anymore. There really isn't a contemporary to her. So
Well, I've been likened to a female Gordon Ramsay. And
that's actually a great sketch.
yeah.
You should do that.
Actually, we met him the other day in the Polo Lounge. Yes, we did.
Fancy.
I mean, all I would say about that is what I try and do is not do anything that people can catch me out. So I do, because I'm a terrible cook. I mean, I can't cook. So what I do is I do what the Gordon Ramsays do. I garnish, and I stir, and I taste, and I shout. And we have a great props guy who is a chef, and he tells us exactly where we are in the meal, and you know, so we don't make a muck up of it.
Okay. This one is from Emmeline. Have I said that right? I hope so. Emmeline Tober. Sorry, can you hear me? Sorry, I made a mistake. Emmeline Tober, for both of you, or whoever wishes to answer, please describe your most challenging day on set.
Oh, that's hard. Because there's lots of different challenges, I guess. There are things that make things challenging, like weather. I know that sounds stupid, but standing outside being freezing is often a distraction.
And it's really cold at Highclere, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like another climate of its own. It's hideous.
So that can be distracting, which is challenging. And there's sort of other, if a full day for me, you know, doing all Edith scenes, which should be a challenge, is actually the most satisfying. So do you know what I mean? They're all different sorts of challenges.
Without doubt, my most scary one was scene 1, season 1, when I think there'd already been people working, so it was like jumping on a moving bus. It was like, you better just go for it, because my first scene was coming into the kitchen, shout, shout, Daisy, Daisy, blah, 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 lots of business, props, and it was like going down a mine shaft head first. It was, really was. It was like, there's no warm-up for this, you just have to jump. And then it got easier from then, really.
Yeah, so my first scene, it was one that was cut from the episode. Actually, it wasn't in America. You had it, but they cut it in the UK, where I am with Hugh and crying over Patrick's death, which was like, that was the first scene I did on camera ever. And it was with Hugh Bonneville, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and if you wouldn't mind crying and standing in front of this fireplace. And so that was really scary. But Hugh was just the best kind of actor on that day, and could sense that I was nervous and played a fun game with me. And then our next scene, Jim arrived, and Jim Carter is the best at making you feel comfortable. I have to say that it's one of the things I'm most grateful for in this show, is that I've been surrounded by people who have set the best example for how to behave on set and how to know all the crew and know your castmates and work together to make a stronger scene. And yeah, they helped that challenging day go better, I think.
Now, there are a lot of Mrs. Patmore fan notes here. So, first, Mariana Katz, you are there. Yeah. First, she would like to declare that you rock.
Oh, thanks.
Well
You hear that all the time.
I do not.
Your dreams storyline, what do you envision for the sassy Mrs. Patmore? What don't we know about her? That's
I think
a great question.
she's a Broadway musical theatre star, and she has the most gorgeous leading man, and they have a show devoted to them, and it's a huge hit, and she gets a fabulous big rock song to sing, and I don't know, really. I wouldn't mind her having a dog.
The thing is, you really, really mean that, and like
I do.
that would be the dream if for the next script to show up.
I've
I
asked.
love it.
I've asked for 3 things. I said,
Yes.
"Can I have another boyfriend?" Well, I don't know about that. Well, can I have a dog? Oh, dogs, difficult.
Yes.
Well, can I have a scene with Maggie Smith? No, that's quite difficult.
It's hard to imagine engineering her down the stairs.
Well,
isn't
I
it?
know, but she doesn't have to meet downstairs. He said, well, exactly. He said, well, where's she going to meet her? And I said, well, in the drive. I don't know. She could be getting out. I don't know.
You could
It's
bring her something on a tray or
I
something.
could.
at some point.
She's always making snide remarks about me, so she could summon me, I'm thinking.
Well, she should.
Yeah. Anyway, watch this space.
And, I mean, a lot of intimidating talent, as you were saying, and imported talent. You bring them in now. What's that like, working with the Americans on a British set?
It's so fun. It's really, really funny. Like when Paul arrived, Paul Giamatti is in this season, and he's so brilliant. And the first scene we did was us having tea, and he was like, "Is this it?" Like, and I was like, "Yeah, that's the scene. Like, we're just gonna sit and drink this tea, and there's, there's some subtext, but we'll just give us a look. And we're just gonna drink the tea." It was really not very. There's no car chases.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not
Maybe
yet.
Mrs. Patmore will get a car chase.
Actually, there was a car chase. I did
there
drive
was,
the car
there was
after
a car
Sybil.
accident that we
Well,
all
and that's true.
remember,
So
too.
less cars this season. You'll be pleased to know.
Dangerous vehicles. Sahar, is that right? Okay. And again, the most rewarding or most challenging part. So I think you may have covered that, but if you have another question, we'll come back. And then Jean July asks, how did you prepare beyond, you have a guy downstairs who lined you up, but there must be times in terms of the social protocols of the era and the social caste system where you need a little coaching. You need a little
Alistair's your man. We call him the Oracle. He's on set for upstairs and downstairs scenes, and all kinds of things get covered. Wasn't there something called Asparagus Gate?
Oh yeah, it was really funny. Because there was asparagus served with one of the meals, and there was a dispute as to whether or not you would use your fingers or a fork to eat it, whether you just pick it up or not. So in the end, in order to save time and stop this row, we sliced up our asparagus to look like green beans. So they just got around that. But yeah, Alistair was saying one thing, Julian was on the mobile saying another, and it was a farce.
Very
The
complicated.
fact is, the combination of a good script from a man who knows, Julian knows a lot about it anyway, and Alistair, if you get stuck, that's kind of, that does well for us, really.
You've got a safety net there. So.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Asparagus, right? And by the way, we brought asparagus for everyone. No, we haven't. An actor's life is, an education, and I think for both of you, this has been just an amazing journey and an inspiration to anybody who chooses this work.
Can I just say, to all those ladies of my age where they say, there's no parts for you after 40, forget it. Bullshit.
Thank you both very much.